It was supposed to be her day off. Dr. Rose Mwangi collapsed onto the faded beige couch in her small but neat apartment in the heart of Shenzhen. The soft hum of the city filtered through her slightly open window. Car horns, distant chatter, the clatter of scooter wheels on wet pavement. She had drawn the curtains halfway to let in the evening light, which was now slowly dimming under heavy gray clouds. She exhaled deeply, letting her head sink into the cushion. Her curly black hair was damp with sweat from the humid day. Her scrubs wrinkled from a long shift the night before. She had spent over 18 hours in the emergency unit, treating patients, diagnosing strange symptoms, saving lives with steady hands and a sharp mind. Now finally she had a day to herself. The television flickered in front of her, a news anchor speaking rapidly in Mandarin. Rose had grown used to the speed of the language, though her accent still clung to her words like a soft reminder of her Kenyan roots. The anchor warned of heavy thunderstorms rolling in from the east. Streets would flood. Lightning would strike. The government urged people to stay indoors. "Great," she muttered under her breath, picking up the remote and turning the television off. "The one day I get off." Before she could even lean back again, her phone buzzed loudly on the coffee table. The screen flashed, Riley Chen. Rose stared at it for a moment. Riley was her closest friend in China, one of the few people who made her laugh during hard days. She smiled, thinking it was probably a quick check-in. She answered the call with a lazy yawn. "Riley," she said, stretching. "Rose." Riley's voice was hurried, sharp. "Please, you need to come to the hospital now. There's an emergency. Someone poisoned a billionaire. He's unconscious and no one knows what was used." Rose blinked. "Riley, I'm off duty today. I barely made it through yesterday's shift. The weather's getting worse. Please. You're the only one who understands rare poisons. No one else can figure this out, Rose. If you don't come now, he might die." There was panic in Riley's voice, desperation. Rose looked out the window. The sky had turned almost black. The first drops of rain began to tap against the glass. Thunder rolled softly in the distance like the growl of something ancient. Her conscience battled her exhaustion. Could she really sit here while someone died? "Fine," she said at last, grabbing her coat. "I'll be there soon." By the time she arrived at the hospital, the rain had become steady, cold droplets soaking through her coat. She held her bag tightly to her side as she stepped inside the familiar white building. Fluorescent lights flickered above, reflecting off the wet floors. She pulled out her phone and called Riley. "Where's the patient?" Rose asked, slightly out of breath. "Third floor emergency unit," Riley said quickly, then hung up. Rose paused. The third floor emergency unit was under renovation the last time she checked. It hadn't been safe to use. Did they finish construction? She didn't want to waste time. If someone had really been poisoned, every second counted. She climbed the stairs, her wet shoes squeaking against the marble steps. The corridor on the third floor was strangely quiet. No nurses, no doctors, no buzz of machines. Just silence. She pushed open the emergency ward doors and stepped into the darkness. "Hello," she called out, frowning. Her phone rang again, but when she picked it up, the screen flashed. No service. A second later, the overhead lights blinked on one by one, flickering and dim, casting long shadows across the empty room. Rose turned around quickly, her instincts on high alert. That's when she saw Riley. She was walking slowly toward her from the hallway, wearing a strange smile. Her nurse uniform was soaked from the rain, her hair clinging to her face. Something about her eyes made Rose feel suddenly cold. "Where's the patient?" Rose asked. "There is no patient," Riley said, her voice eerily calm. "What?" Riley stepped closer, pulling something from her coat pocket. Syringe. It gleamed under the flickering light. Before Rose could move, Riley lunged. Pain exploded in her neck as the needle pierced her skin. Her vision blurred. Her legs gave out. She collapsed to the ground. When Rose opened her eyes, everything was wet. She was lying flat, her back against the cold concrete of the hospital rooftop. Rain poured down from the sky like a punishment. Thunder cracked loudly above. Her body ached. Her wrists and ankles were bound with wet rope. She looked around, dazed, heart thudding. Then she saw where she was. At the edge of the rooftop. She screamed, "Help! Somebody! Please!" Footsteps approached. Riley emerged from the shadows, an umbrella in one hand, the same smile still on her lips. "Riley, please," Rose gasped. "Don't do this." Why are you doing this?" Riley tilted her head. "Because I'm tired of you always being the best. The one everyone praises. The one he chose." "He?" Rose's mind struggled to follow. "Dr. Wei. He wanted you. Not me. You were always better. Martyr. Even here in my country you shine too brightly. I was never your friend, Rose. I've hated you since the day we met." Rose began to cry, her hands slipping against the wet ropes. "Riley. I've never done anything to hurt you. Please don't do this." But Riley didn't listen. She leaned forward and shoved Rose hard. Rose screamed as her body slipped off the edge, wind rushing past her ears. But then lightning split the sky. A blinding flash of white struck her midair. The sound was deafening. And then, nothing. No body hit the ground. No scream echoed. Just the rain falling quietly onto the street below. And Riley standing frozen at the edge, her eyes wide with horror. Rose had vanished. Just like that. Like a whisper stolen by the storm. Rose's eyes snapped open. Her breath caught in her throat as a strange scent filled her nose. Earthy, bitter and sharp, like dried herbs soaked in rainwater. She sat up with a jolt, gasping, clutching her chest. Her heart thundered in her ears. Where was she? She looked down at herself and froze. Her hands were not in gloves. Her skin was still dark, her fingers long and slender, but she wasn't wearing scrubs. She wore a flowing silk robe, soft yet heavy, the sleeves embroidered with delicate golden thread. It was a deep crimson red, the kind of robe she'd seen only in Chinese historical dramas. Her waist was tied tightly with a sash. Her hair, no longer cropped short, hung in long, thick braids down her back. "What is going on?" she thought, her eyes darting around. The room she was in was unfamiliar. The walls were wooden, polished but plain, and the windows had paper screens, not glass. Everything was lit by oil lamps, flickering faintly. A small wooden table sat nearby, and on it were crushed herbs, a porcelain teacup, and a pestle stained with dark green liquid. Then it hit her. The herbs. The bitterness. Her shaking hands. This body had just tried to commit suicide. She touched her stomach, but there was no pain. Did she stop before she drank it? Or did I arrive just in time? She slowly rose to her feet, her legs weak, her mind swirling with confusion and dread. She stumbled toward a bronze mirror on the wall and gasped. The face staring back was not her own, but it also was. It was a young woman, dark-skinned like her, with wide, sorrowful eyes. But this face carried a different expression. Defeat, pain, a lingering emptiness. There were faint bruises on her arms. Her lips were cracked and dry. Though the face was different in shape, the pain in the eyes felt too familiar. The girl whose body she had taken had suffered. "Who are you?" Rose whispered to the mirror. "And why me?" Before she could think further, the door slammed open with a loud thud. She turned in alarm. An old man stood there, tall and dressed in scholar's robes. His beard was white, but his face was stern and cold. Behind him were 3 palace guards in iron armor, their expressions blank. "There she is," the old man said, his voice like ice. "Take her away." "Wait, what?" Rose cried as the guards moved forward. "I don't understand." 2 of them grabbed her arms roughly. The third opened a scroll and read silently. "You're mistaken," she yelled, struggling. "I haven't done anything wrong." But they didn't listen. They dragged her from the room as she screamed. Her bare feet scraped against the stone path outside as she was taken across the courtyard. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained gray. Servants and onlookers stood still as she passed by, whispering behind their hands. "She's the cursed daughter. Look at her skin like ink. The heavens must be punishing the prime scholar." Rose heard it all. Every word, every cruel whisper. As they dragged her past a marble fountain, she looked up and saw the old man following behind. Something about him twisted her gut. She turned her head and pleaded, "Please, Sir Father, why are you doing this? Please don't send me away like this. I didn't do anything wrong." The old man's face darkened. "You are a danger to my household. I'm your daughter." "No," he said coldly. "You are the first daughter of a cursed wife, born under a blood moon, with skin darker than the night. You bring shame and misfortune. If I do not send you to the emperor, you may harm my second daughter out of jealousy." "Jealousy?" Rose repeated in disbelief. "I don't even know her." The man stepped closer, his voice lowered with hatred. "Lienor is precious. She is fair, graceful, and everything a noble daughter should be. But you bring death wherever you go. Be grateful I found a place for you in the palace." He turned his back on her. "But the girl who was here before me," Rose's voice shook. "She wasn't evil, was she?" The guards didn't give her time to say more. They yanked her away again, past the gates of the manor, down the stone steps, and into a waiting carriage marked with the royal crest. The journey to the palace felt endless. By the time they arrived, the sky had turned golden with the setting sun. The palace was vast, built with red walls and golden rooftops, towering gates and white marble bridges. Should have looked beautiful, but to Rose it looked like a cage. When the carriage stopped, more palace guards were waiting. They took one look at her dark skin, her robe now damp with sweat, and raised their eyebrows. Murmurs began immediately. "This one. She's too strange. Why would His Majesty accept something so foreign?" They didn't lower their voices. They didn't even try to hide their disgust. Rose kept her head down as they led her through the palace. They passed through long halls lined with willow trees and stone dragons, past laughing concubines who stopped and stared at her. "She's new. Look at her color. What is the emperor thinking? She won't last a week." The guards took her to a small, empty room in the furthest corner of the inner court. The windows were barred. The door was locked behind her. She was alone. Again. She sat down on the floor, numb, cold, and heartbroken. Her hands trembled as she covered her face. Tears slipped down her cheeks, hot and silent. She remembered everything, the betrayal, the rooftop, the lightning. And Riley, her so-called friend. She had trusted her, shared secrets, laughed with her. And Riley had stabbed her in the neck, left her to die like trash, just for a man. Now Rose was in a world where she was hated again. Stranger. Prisoner in silk robes. The weight of 2 lifetimes crushed her. She sobbed quietly, knees pulled to her chest, rocking slightly as rain began to fall again outside. "I just wanted to rest," she whispered. But rest was a luxury never meant for girls like her. A week passed. 7 long silent days. Rose remained locked in the cold, stone-floored room tucked in the far corner of the palace. The windows let in little light, the air was damp, and the silence was heavy. No one visited her. No food unless she begged. No voices except the faint whispers of other maids outside, speaking of her as if she were some cursed spirit. Then, one morning, just as she was brushing her fingers across the wall absent-mindedly, the door creaked open. Startled, Rose looked up quickly. A maid entered. She was young, her face carefully emotionless, dressed in a formal Chinese robe the color of pale jade. In her arms, she carried a silver robe embroidered with peonies and cloud patterns, the fabric shimmering like water in moonlight. "His Majesty has ordered your attendance at the spring blossom gathering," the maid said softly, avoiding Rose's eyes. "You are to wear this." Rose stared at the robe, confused. Why now? After all the silence and hatred. Still, she nodded silently and took it with trembling hands. The robe was cold when she slipped it on, brushing against her skin like wind. A wide belt was tied around her waist, and her long braids were pinned up loosely. She didn't even know what she looked like. There was no mirror in the room, but she walked behind the maid anyway, trying not to stumble. They passed through halls lined with flowering plum trees, the scent of blossoms mixing with incense in the air. Music drifted from somewhere far away, soft flute tones, the tinkling of gouging strings. Eventually, they reached the wide courtyard where the gathering was already in progress. The consorts and concubines were seated on elegant red cushions placed around a stage where dancers in pink silk performed slow, graceful movements. Petals floated from above, gently falling like snow. Rose sat in the farthest row, alone. Immediately she felt it, the shift in the air. Whispers erupted like ripples in water. Why is she here? Look at her, dressed in silver, as if she were one of us. She must have begged for attention. Rose kept her eyes down, her heart pounding. She clenched her fists in her lap, pretending not to hear, but every word burned like acid in her ears. She tried to focus on the dancers, on their beauty, their skill. She was here only to survive. But fate wasn't done with her yet. Suddenly, the murmurs hushed. The air shifted again, but this time with tension. Rose turned just in time to see a figure in pale gold robes approaching. She was tall, with sharp cheekbones and thinly arched eyebrows, her lips painted red. Her long nails gleamed like glass. Everyone bowed slightly as she passed. Consort Sarah, one of the highest-ranked consorts in the harem. Rose barely had time to process it before. A sharp, ringing sound echoed across the courtyard. Pain exploded across Rose's cheek. Her head snapped to the side, and she nearly lost her balance. Her skin stung. The world tilted for a moment. "You beast!" Consort Sarah screamed, pointing an accusing finger at her. "You dare wear silver? You stole my peony hairpins, didn't you? To impress His Majesty." The crowd gasped. Rose blinked, stunned, hand slowly rising to her burning cheek. I didn't," she whispered, voice shaking. "Oh, don't pretend," Consort Sarah shouted, her voice shrill with rage. "You were locked away for a week and still find a way to crawl your way into the gathering dressed like one of us? You think being a novelty will earn you favor?" Rose was too shocked to reply. Her face throbbed. Her pride was crumbling. She stood frozen as the other women stared with widened eyes, some laughing behind their fans. One whispered, "She should have stayed locked up." Another said, "Maybe the emperor has strange tastes." Consort Sarah stepped closer, eyes blazing. "You are filth," she hissed. "You don't belong here. I will make sure the emperor never looks at you." Rose met her gaze, her breathing shallow, her heart loud in her ears. Then something inside her shifted. A quiet, bitter flame rose in her chest. She had died once. She had trusted and been betrayed. She had been sold like livestock, treated like dirt. And now she was being slapped and accused for something she didn't even do. The dancers had stopped. The music faded. All eyes were on her. Rose stood up slowly, her voice shaking but audible. "I did not steal anything," she said. "If you have proof, show it. If not, then do not raise your hand against me again." The words fell into the silence like stones in a still pond. Gasps followed. Some of the lower concubines covered their mouths. Few looked impressed. The maid who had escorted her shifted uncomfortably. Consort Sarah's face twisted in disbelief. "What did you say to me?" Before Rose could reply, a deep voice rang out from above. "Enough." Every head turned toward the raised pavilion. I'm shock and fear. The emperor had arrived.